Now, back when we first started learning about Lucasfilm's High Republic era project, we were told that one of the things that sort of inspired it was a question from Kathleen Kennedy to the team creating it. And that question was, what would scare a Jedi? And it was about at that point that any and all doubts I had about Kennedy not really understanding Star Wars were erased. Because that's almost a, shall we say, redundant or pointless question when you consider fear itself is the greatest enemy of a Jedi. It's what can lead one of them down the dark path. And so any sort of true or great enemy or threat to the Jedi is obviously going to be one that causes them to be afraid and to have to face that fear in order to defeat it. I mean, the sequel trilogy got many things wrong, I felt, but one thing it got right, and one of the best lines in it, and one of the best lines in all of Star Wars, if we're going to be fair and honest, came from Luke in The Rise of Skywalker when he said, "Confronting fear is the destiny of a Jedi." Because it's not that Jedi don't experience fear, even the greatest of them do. Watch the Yoda arc in Season 6 of the Clone Wars. It's that they learn how to acknowledge it, face it, and not let it control them or dictate their actions. Remember what Vader says to Luke in The Empire Strikes Back. Obi-Wan has taught you well. You have controlled your fear. Or what Yoda says to Luke earlier in that movie, after Luke boldly declares that he's not afraid, Yoda says, "You will be." And so, as I've said before, I think this is all one of the biggest misconceptions about the Jedi. It's not that they don't allow themselves to feel emotions. It's not that they don't feel love, fear, and the full gamut of them in between. It's that they don't allow themselves to be controlled by their emotions. Or should I say, negative emotions, because as Anakin says in Episode 2, they're encouraged to love, and compassion is essential to a Jedi's life. And sure, in that moment he's trying to use that to justify his pursuit of Padme, but he's still not wrong. A Jedi is supposed to love and care about everyone, but do it equally, to never play favorites, hence why they don't allow attachments, because that leads to the fear of loss as well as jealousy, which is the shadow of greed, as Yoda says. Anyway here, sorry for the little tangent to open up this video, but I wanted to explain why it worries me when they keep talking about this whole what would scare a Jedi question in relation to the High Republic like it's the most revolutionary question ever, when in reality it shows or conveys ignorance on their part, because it should just be a given when conjuring up a new foe for the Jedi, that the Jedi will fear them on some level. Regardless though, apparently thanks to the official Star Wars website, we've now been told or given an answer to Kennedy's question. We know what scares the Jedi, and it's plant monsters, otherwise known as the Drengir. And look, I've said before I'm not going to make any sort of final judgment on the High Republic era till I actually get to read it. But I don't know about this one, they're really trying to test me here, because I was mostly okay with the first villains that they announced, which were these space Vikings known as the Nil, who have this kind of corny motto about how you can't take it with you, but we can take it from you, which to me sounds like a lamer version of the Necromonger saying, "You keep what you kill" from the Riddick universe. But anyway, I thought maybe the Sith would be the ones behind the Nil, pulling their strings and sort of fighting and weakening the Jedi via proxy, and that it'll all play into their long-running master plan that finally comes to fruition with Sidious. I thought this could end up being pretty interesting, and maybe still will be, who knows. But now we also have the Drengir, who are described as a new creeping terror rising from the ground beneath their feet. The Drengir are sentient plant life who are looking to reap a terrible harvest across the galactic frontier. And I'm guessing they must somehow be able to spread from planet to planet quite easily, hence the threat to the whole galaxy or the frontier, and they probably maybe infect people or something, or just eat and consume everything. And all this is already giving me vibes of the Flood from Halo, but again, we'll have to wait and see. But if I had to venture a guess about what this will all turn out to be, I'm going to say these plant monsters will probably end up being some sort of physical manifestation of a corruption within the Force, because we do know from the opening crawl of the High Republic that there is a threat to the Force itself, and that would of course scare a Jedi, something that threatens to destroy the entire Force. So maybe there's some sort of, I don't know, there's some type of poison in the Force which is causing it to take on the form of destructive life or plant monsters. Meaning maybe there's something wrong with the Force itself, again, some sort of corruption within it, and it's causing some sort of parasitic response where it's consuming all normal life. And honestly, I wouldn't be opposed to the core idea of something like that. I mean, the Force is symbiotic in nature normally. It's life working together for the mutual benefit of all, as Qui-Gon basically says. So a great threat to the Force would be something parasitic, something that leeches off the Force and consumes it, and interrupts the flow between the living and the cosmic Force. Now, the real question is, are they actually clever enough to go that deep with it all, or are these really just plant monsters? And again, considering in the opening crawl they do talk about a threat to the Force itself, I think there's a chance they might actually try to go this route with them, or something similar, that maybe they're like a literal cancer of the Force, a part of it growing out of control, and these Drengir are like tumors. And who knows, maybe the Sith will be behind it all. Maybe before Plagueis, other Sith Lords were attempting to create life by tampering with the Force and the midichlorians and all that other fun stuff, and they accidentally created the Drengir, or maybe they even purposely created them for some reason, again to weaken the Jedi, and maybe they lose control of them or things don't go as they expected. Either way though, plant monsters running wild across the galaxy seems strange, even if there's a solid idea behind them, which we'll have to wait and see if there is. And I do hope we eventually learn, yes, that the Sith are behind it all, not because the Sith always need to have their hands in everything, but because, to me, and you can of course feel differently, the most interesting aspect of this time period, this era between when the Sith vanish 1,000 years before the prequels, and when they show back up in them, is what are they up to? What were they doing behind the scenes for 1,000 years? And yeah, there could certainly be other interesting stories besides that. We are, again, talking about 1,000 years here, so I'm sure some things have happened. But if you're going to go all in on a time period when the Sith are around and their plan is getting closer and closer to fruition, then bring them in and show it. Don't go with this idea that plant monsters tried to destroy the galaxy 200 years ago, but were defeated. And really, if they wanted to do something like this, they should have made it the actual sequel trilogy, A Threat to the Force, I mean. But if they want to go something like plant monsters, do it after the sequels, where we have no idea how it'll all play out and end. Let plant monsters be the first great threat that Rey's Jedi Order will have to face if you want, and I'm sure dozens upon dozens of people will end up buying those books and comics. In closing here, as I said before, no final judgments on the High Republic era till after I get my hands on all this and get to read it and experience it for myself. But so far, I'm just not all that excited, and plant monsters just sound a bit too silly to me. I could never imagine seeing them in a movie, for example, especially a Lucas Star Wars movie. I could never imagine a deleted scene from The Empire Strikes Back being unearthed, where Yoda is telling Luke about that time, 200 years ago, when plant monsters almost took over the galaxy and ate the Force. And that's kind of how I personally judge all new things or ideas presented in Star Wars. I ask, what if I saw this in the original trilogy or the prequels? Would it feel like it fits? And you, of course, don't have to do it that way or agree with me, but that's just my thing or my test to sort of see if any idea is good or not. And one of the reasons I love something like the Old Republic or the game Knights of the Old Republic, which kicked it off, is because it immediately felt like it fit with most everything Lucas had done. There was nothing all too weird or outlandish in it. It felt like genuine Star Wars and meshed well with what Lucas had done. But the High Republic era, with its plant monsters, so far feels like it might end up being something too far outside the box. Well, that's all I've got for you this time. Now it's your turn to tell me what you think about the Drengir, about these plant-based villains. Do they sound cool? Do you think they'll work? Or do they just sound silly to you? Whatever the case may be, leave a comment below, and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.